Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast and the YouTube video and everything if you're watching this from wherever we're at. You might notice that Nick is not here, sadly. We have a different Nick.
Hello.
We have to substitute him. And I got Brian, the guy behind the scenes that you don't see normally, is now in front of the camera.
Yeah, it's my first time.
Welcome to the podcast, guys. So, Nick Aguigui, did I say that right? Aguigui?
Aguigui.
Aguigui?
Aguigui.
Is it a gege?
Aguigui.
It's a gigi.
A giggles.
Giggles. You're very giggly.
I know.
I like that.
I love this. This is going to be great.
So, Nick Aguigui, I said that right?
Yeah.
We're going to spend the podcast figuring out his last name.
It's taking about 80 tries to get this right.
Nick is Phil Wickhams and Brandon Lake's production manager and monitor engineer, right?
Yeah.
That's the right way to say it.
And PM dude.
He does all of it. He does all the stuff. So if you've seen their show or you see it coming up, are you going out on the next tour? The whole Summer Nights thing?
Summer Nights thing, yeah. Unfortunately, I will not be the PM for that.
Oh, but you're doing monitors.
Doing monitors still.
Love it. Who is the
homie
PM for that?
Named Peter Strife.
Peter Strife. Shout out to Peter.
Yeah.
Congrats on the gig.
Excited to learn from him.
Love it. But we're going to talk to you right now. How long have you been doing monitors and production managing, period? Period.
Doing
As the
monitors.
kids say.
Doing monitors, I started like my first fly date with Phil in 2016, 2017.
Wow.
And then PMing was pretty recent. I think it was the start of the Hymn of Heaven tour. I think it was 2022.
Sweet.
Yeah, right at the beginning of that. It was a steep learning curve just because, like, we've never done it before.
Right.
But, like, Tom Hester, before we kicked off the tour, he was like, hey, here's some things that, like, you can keep an eye out on, and here's what, like, my advanced templates look like. So definitely learned quickly with the aid of Tom and kind of learned on the fly.
Love that. When did you first get started in the sound? Tell us about the origins. The before times.
The before times. So I originally went to like a Christian high school, and like every Wednesday we had like Wednesday chapel. And my buddy at the time, Noah Hawley, was like doing pro presenter and like audio and lighting for this chapel. And like I saw him leave class, and I was like, hell yeah, I want to do that, because I didn't want to like add to my homework, sit in class any longer. So like
Right.
started to do Wednesday chapel, and then that turned into like, hey, I'm volunteering at like the Sunday service with like the church next door, and they had like an XLA and like a massive L acoustics rig, and that's where I like met Gene Kim and like sort of taught me audio.
What
and
church was that?
It was called The Rock.
Oh, the Rock, San Diego. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that place.
So
Did you
Couple homies still work there.
did
Jacob
you end up
Cervantes,
like working
shout
there
out.
at all?
yeah, so like I think it was 2012, 2013. Gene put me on staff as like A2 monitor guy, like bottom of the barrel in production, and that's where I like sort of learned through the church and all that. And I think I left staff in 2016. Yeah.
And that's when you hit the road.
Hit the road, started freelancing. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be a big leap, but like doors opened and like got to work hard, and yeah, it was fun.
Sweet.
It's been fun.
It's kind of cool because I started off as a monitor guy too, in this church here, started off as a monitor guy, and, I was very young. I actually was volunteering as a monitor guy first,
Yeah,
and then I came on staff.
yeah,
So, I mean, being a monitor tech, I feel like your role as a monitor guy, it's important because you need to know the band.
yeah,
And I feel like with Phil and Brandon, you know that band really well, and they like working with you, and you know them, and it just creates a good relationship with them.
yeah. It's definitely like starting off in that position. It definitely taught me a lot about like prep and building that like trust, because for every bit that like you can throw up a good mix, like you have to be trustworthy enough and like set people up for success. And like whenever the artists walk out on the stage, like just letting them have the peace of mind, like, oh,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna feel okay, like this performance is gonna go well.
How important is the relationship between you and the band members to do your job, but also them do their job better, would you say?
I think it's probably the most important thing. Like,
In what ways does it help it job-wise?
there's a lot of trust and a lot of like nonverbals that go into like mixing monitors. Yeah, in terms of like trust and making sure that everything's set up. Like I know we just said that, but like you get into a venue, you start loading in, and like you get to know how a musician sets up their kit, sets up their pedal board. You get to know like how they place things in their mixes, and in terms of like comfortability and just getting to know them, like it's super important.
You know, I was, I think it was a few weeks ago, you know, one of the musicians, they saw me setting up on stage and they're like, you put out the musician's pedal board? I said, yeah, because it helps them out on Sunday mornings to get ready for, you know, what they need to make happen, you know?
Yeah.
And it's because I know them. And one of the things I brought up to him, it's like when you know like your musician has a bad back and you know you could help them out by just putting something out for them on Sunday morning, it shows that you care for them too, you know?
This is true. This is true.
Yeah, and like even at the end of the day, like their job as a musician is to like play. Like you're playing the part, you're performing, you're doing the thing. And like for me, my perspective is the more I can take off your plate so that you can focus on like what you do and like how you're most awesome, like that's what I want to do so that the team wins.
Yeah, exactly.
True that. Tell us a little bit about what the tours you have done have been with Phil and Brandon, like full band, acoustic sets.
Yeah, it's been
what are
like
the different sizes.
a toss up. So with Phil, like he always does the sing along thing. So that's like him and an acoustic guitar and a keyboard player and like other guest artists. And then like that'll scale up to full band. And then same thing with Brandon, like full band. I don't think we've done like an acoustic one-off thing yet, but like I think Brandon's bread and butter is full band vibe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Me and Brian went and saw that show
That
actually
was-
in LA at
That was an
YouTube Theater.
amazing show. Actually, I
It
gotta
was really
say,
good.
that was an amazing venue. That venue
That
sounded
venue was nuts.
phenomenal.
If you haven't been to the YouTube Theater in LA,
Yeah,
pretty great new
go
venue.
see something there. You know what I have
Great.
to say is when Brandon did his acoustic set that night, it was really good.
Yeah.
Like when he started, because I was expecting him to do rattle, like full band, everything. He busts out his acoustic and did it acoustically, and I was like, oh, this is a great moment.
I was so nervous that day because when I tipped my console, something funky like happened.
Yeah.
The power supplies weren't reflecting on like console diagnostics, and OptiCore wasn't showing up. So like we loaded in at 10, and
Dang.
like we didn't figure out the console situation until like 1 p.m., 2 p.m. And thankfully, like our front of house guy at the time was Adam Taylor, and Adam's like, oh, I'm gonna call Digico, like call Ryan, and they ended up like taking him through the whole sequence, and like we got the console to come back online, but I was like
That
like,
is
it got-
terrifying.
it got enough and like bad to where the YouTube theater guys were like, we'll gladly roll out our 338 and you can
Yeah.
like,
Did you end up using theirs, or did you end
Crazy.
up getting your 338 working?
I ended up getting the 338 back up online. Yeah, Adam like really dove deep into like,
Yeah, Adam knows his stuff when
Yeah.
it comes to Digico stuff.
the dude's such a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
Hopefully we get Adam on the show. He'd be great.
Adam, you
If you're
should
watching
come.
this, Adam. So yeah, take us into the process on advancing, say, Phil. What do you go into a venue asking? What do they give you? Give everyone like a day in the life of the PM, essentially.
For
From
like
getting
full
out of
tour
bed.
or like one off.
Let's go with the one-offs, I guess. We'll start with that and then say what the difference is with a tour.
Yeah. One-offs are super like tricky because it can either be like a conference or a festival or like a private event, and it's kind of like a toss-up where you don't know what you're getting into. So the advanced process really helps iron out any like potential mishap. So I have like a template that I start off from, whether if that's hopping on a call or sending out an email. Typically what will happen is Brandon Breitenbach, Phil's manager, will say like, hey, we have this event coming down the pipe. Let me introduce you to their team. And again, like hop on a call, send out an email, and I'll basically go through like what they have, and at the same time like send out our rider like, hey, this is what our audio needs are, this is what our lighting needs are, this is what our backline needs are. Typically most of the time like the venues are set up, like they have an awesome rig, and for Wickham we have show files for like almost every console under the sun, so we're a lot more flexible in terms of our like audio package. But like again, going through the advanced process, top to bottom, like, hey, here's our rider, here's our input list, our output list, here's our backline spec, here's what we require for lighting. Sometimes I'll typically like get into the finer details where I'll have an MP4 of like a prior performance, and if we're not traveling with an LD, I'll say like, hey, this is kind of what we're looking for in terms of lighting, this is what we're looking for in terms of camera shots if we're doing IMAG for the night. But yeah, as far as like the advanced process, it's always book and then send off the rider, take him through the whole questionnaire of here's audio, here's video, here's lighting, here's cameras, here's like the little miscellaneous stuff, like,
Right.
yeah.
Now take us into the tour life, because obviously it's rough. You're on a bus,
Yeah.
getting up early, going to bed late, probably. How does that day look? Morning to like night, the next gig in the morning or whatever.
Morning to night tour is a lot more fun than one-offs. One-offs you always have like a lot more time to like go explore a city or go like get a drink or go hang out. Just because like we're typically not traveling with our own package, and it's already like controls already being set up, so there's a lot more free time. But with tour, like we're traveling with our tractor trailer, we're traveling with all our gear, so like 9 o'clock we'll do walkthrough and we'll take a look at everything through the venue. But like again, starting off tour, like you'll go through the whole advanced song and dance with the venues, and
Right.
you'll touch base via email and call and go through that whole list again, where it's like, hey, like if we're not traveling with PA, like what PA do you have? Do you have a company switch on site? If you don't have a company switch, do you have tie-ins where we can get our camtails in?
Right.
If not, like, do we need to rent from Sunbelt?
Right.
Little tiny stuff that like sets up the whole crew for success.
Right.
But in terms of like tour advance, I prefer it a lot more because like most churches, like everything's already there. You have PA, you have LED wall, you have like the solid people, but like some churches don't have docks. So
True,
you have
yeah.
to do like
That's rough.
the lobby push.
We don't have a dock.
I know we
so,
don't. It can be fun getting gear in and out around Christmas and Easter.
Yeah. Seriously.
You know, I do have to say, I mean, advancing, prepping, I would say that's the most nerve-wracking thing to do. Like when
Yeah.
people ask, like when I go into a venue and we're setting up, they're like, are you nervous? I'm like, no, the advancing and setting up part.
Yeah.
Like setting up the whole, making sure your ins and outs are there, or, you know, making sure your inputs, you know, you're crossing your I's, or crossing your T's, dotting your I's, that you're doing all of that
Yeah.
to make sure that you're ready for that event when you walk through that door.
Yeah, and like when I first started doing the like PM thing, Tom Hester was like, "Hey, this job is not stressful whatsoever. It's only stressful when you like forget to look at the things on your list."
Exactly.
And like that has been really helpful for me because like right now balancing stuff between the two artists, like between one-offs and the two tours, like both artists had one-offs going on in between sing-along and Miracle Nights. So like
Dang.
trying to keep all that on track. Like
Yeah.
if I didn't have my calendar and I didn't have
Oh.
like my Trello Basecamp stuff, like
Trello.
your boy would be in trouble.
Love Trello.
Oh my gosh, Trello is
That kind
our
of
magic
transitions
tool
great
here.
into that. What other apps do you guys use for? Do you guys use On Tour and all that, or Master Tour?
Master Tour, yeah. But
Master is
recently
beast.
I figured out there's like a whole advanced portion of Master Tour.
Oh yeah.
I never
It's
knew
great.
that.
It's so good. I did Chris Tomlin with Master Tour. That was my first time using it. I'm like, man, this app is great. It's got all my hotels, flights, lighting info, crew names, who's on when. It was great.
It's freaking awesome.
What are some other apps that help you do your life better in general?
Apps.
Apps, software, whatever it might be.
Honestly, like from a PM perspective, like Master Tour, my phone, and calendar, and
Boom.
like Gmail.
Yeah.
I definitely want to pick our TM's brain, Caleb Cook, because he's a very big systems guy. And
Right.
like I know there's a software out there that could make the advanced process like a lot easier.
Right.
Striving for efficiency.
Totally.
What's your favorite tool to use? Like on the road or
What's a tour you
know.
don't leave your house without?
Frick.
What's like top of the Pelican case?
Top of the Pelican case?
Or what's in your Pelican case, actually? That might be better
I have
Yeah?
like
group of items.
I have like 10 Pelican cases at home. Like
no way.
all-
One for every situation.
I'm not
Gosh.
kidding. Like
That's great.
I have a whole like freaking shelf in my closet, and my wife's like, "Really? Like you added another Pelican?" And I'm like,
Oh my
"Dude, this is
gosh.
You're
like
married?
yes,
Didn't even know he was married.
I knew he was married.
3 years
No
BB."
way. Congratulations.
How many?
What's your
3.
wife's name?
3.
Amanda.
Amanda. Congrats, Amanda. You got yourself a keeper here. What else is in your Pelican?
Honestly, like it's a toss up. So for tour, what I'll do is I'll basically throw it into all the Pelicans, and I'll either fly with it or send it via UPS or freight, and either send it to Spectrum or send it to one of the vendors, and like I'll download all that stuff into our work boxes. But in terms of like top to bottom, there's like a backline Pelican that has like
Dang,
pedals
backline Pelican.
and like tuner pedals and one spots and all that random stuff, like moon gels, just making sure that like the band guys are set up, because like honestly sometimes they'll forget stuff, and like I hate having to go to Tour Supply and like look for strings.
We got
look-
like Donovan, who's
Oh
Phil's
my
MD. He plays for us, and it's crazy. He'll play here Sunday, and fly out and do a show, or reverse that, do Phil's thing, and then fly back and do us the next morning. I'm like, I'm not surprised he misses
I don't know
things
how
all
he
the
does it.
time. It's crazy.
The nice thing is
Homie
like
is
you talk
a
about like
beast.
musicians, you know, not forgetting things. We have like, you know, tuners and stuff for them just in case that they forget it. You know?
Yeah.
Having our top work box, they're like, yeah, we've got our tuner today. Oh, let's go grab it for them, you know? Just being prepared for them to make sure that they're successful for their, you
Yeah.
know, for a church service or a tour or one-off, that they're, you know, set up for success too, you know?
Yeah, and that's like
Totally.
kind of, you hit it right on the head, like circling back to what you're talking about with trust with the musicians and trust with the band. Everyone's going to forget something at some point. And like, hey, I'm here to set you up for success. Like, whether if that means like, dude, you need a freaking like wipe cloth because you're like raging and you're like turning into a sweaty monster. Like, I'm there for you. Or you forgot like a right angle 1/4 inch cable. Like, I'm here for you. I got you.
Oh yeah, we have tons
true.
of those. What's your favorite Waves plugin to use on monitors? Are you like a big Waves guy when it comes to it, or are you one of the type people that I just use the console?
The purists.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm an equal opportunity
There you go.
tool user. I don't know. In terms of like Waves, I haven't really used it much until like 2 years ago, a year ago, from this last fall tour. But in terms of like plugins, I really, really, really like the SSL Master Comp. Like,
Oh yeah.
I know it's such a cop out, but like, it sounds good. It sounds awesome.
It sounds good, and everyone uses it.
I wish there was a way to
Everyone
like
uses it.
get the Neve was it like the PM2B or like the master bus processor with like the depth and the width?
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Oh
god.
gosh, that'd be so nice to have.
If I could
Sheesh.
like tour with one piece of audio gear for like every intermix, that would be the one.
Man,
Dang. Yeah.
that actually would sound really good.
Yeah.
Hey, Waves, you should make that. I'm just saying, you should make it. That'd be great.
Sponsor us.
Well, yes, sponsor us. You know what's funny is like lately, I was using Waves a lot, you know, and then there was like one Sunday where I couldn't get Waves to work and I didn't use it.
Yeah.
I will never forget this. I had someone from the congregation come up to me and he gave me a fist bump and was like, "Bro, that is the best mix I've heard in this sanctuary in a long time."
Oh my god.
And I was like,
After Waves.
after Waves. And I was just blown away. I was like, well,
Granted, he's probably just a normal
you
guy.
know,
Who knows, but
yeah. Well, then I found out he works at one of the at Teen Challenge up the road.
oh, there you go.
I was like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, it's like, you know, I like Waves, and it kind of made me think it's like, you know, maybe I was using too much processing, you know, and how can I kind of break that up, you know, to use what's on board, but use Waves more as an ear candy type of thing to kind of just sweeten the mix almost.
Ear candy.
But yeah, I'm more like, I love Waves. I think it sounds great. I just more have been on the road of, you know, more how can I use it more tastefully, you know?
Amen.
That's kind of where I've been with that right now.
But it also differs from like end of the snake perspective, like front of house versus monitors. Like I wanted to use Waves sparingly because number one, like latency, like you can't just add a crap ton of stuff for ears. And number two, like one thing I really dreaded, at least for Lake, was like tour is always going to be easy dialing up a mix because like SE venue, like if your SE's great, everything should sound pretty close.
Yeah.
But like one-offs, like you can get a D2 rack versus a SD rack, and like the tonality between the 32-bit card versus a regular input card, like it changes, and then you throw in Waves on that, and like if you don't have a redundant server, or your like Waves rig takes a dump, like you're hosed.
Oh, you're so screwed.
Very true.
Like
What is the most catastrophic thing has happened to you on tour or a show?
not on tour. I actually have like maybe 2 or 3. I was a kid, like A2ing a corporate event, and I was like 18 or 19 at the time. And the event was like a gang conference, like FBI, DEA, like local police agencies get together and like talk about like, hey, these are the sting operations that we're doing, and like this is what we learned. And one of the topics for the day was like the sex trade. And there was a former hooker that was like part of the sex trade, that was the keynote speaker. And like she was a very forward woman and like knew what she wanted, and like very vocal and like very controlling of the room. And like I walked up to her with her lav like right before she took stage, and I was like, hey, Nick, I'm like here to mic you up. And there's like a whole bunch of cops in the room, and she's like wearing this like low cut top, and she's like looking at me like, well, are you gonna mic me up? And just like fully expecting me to like do the thing. And I'm like,
that's great. That's fun.
but in terms of like recently like oh crap moments during tour, on the Wickhams Heaven, we were loading in Holland, Michigan, during the winter, and it was like
There it is. I was like, I bet it was during winter.
10 degrees outside.
Oh my
no
gosh.
shit.
Oh, no.
And like this venue didn't have a dock, so we're like pushing everything down the ramp, and there were 2 volunteers that were taking deck down from the tractor trailer into the dock or into the loading area, whatever. And this guy was like not paying attention, so he's like holding the deck and walking down the ramp, and like falls and like does a tumble from the tractor trailer onto the concrete, onto the ice, and like he had to go to the hospital and get surgery. And that was probably the first time ever where I was like, dude, this is real. Like people
That's dangerous
can get
out there.
hurt.
Yeah, people can get really hurt.
Crazy.
We had it one time at the Crusade where I think one of the trusses fell on someone's head, right?
A pipe fell and hit
pipe,
someone in the
yeah.
head. Yeah.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
crazy.
That was
Yikes.
not
The
a
ambulance
good.
showed up and everything. From then on, it was like they tried to get everyone to wear hard hats, which now you do have to wear a hard hat, but most of the people either don't listen or they're not close enough to need one now. But it's wild. You know, if you haven't seen Phil Wickham or Brandon Lake yet, you clearly haven't been listening to music or Christian music. So tell us, do you listen to Christian music?
I do.
Well, that's good.
It's very inspirational.
That's great. That's great. Speaking of inspirational, tell us about this Thomas Rhetts EQ thing I hear about.
Oh my gosh, this is a great story. We were
Tell
having a
me
conversation
about this.
It kind of actually started with we were talking about like Phil's EQ
Is this
for his
Smitty's
ears.
like EQ too?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, curious. Did he come out with him or no?
No, so,
So
like,
it's just Thomas by himself.
Thomas by himself, like, it was an acoustic thing, reached out to his team and was like, hey, is there anything in particular that, like, Thomas is looking for? Because, like, we ran into his package at Spectrum when they're in prep, and there's, like, SD7 with a whole bunch of, like, Lexicons and, like, full outboard gear, just, like, boom, massive. Anyways, the stuff that they sent for his mix, like, there was a screenshot of, like, the channel strip for the EQ, and then a screenshot of, like, the dynamic comps for his EQ, and, like, obviously very, 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 very bright, but, like, high pass at, like, 300, and, like, dips everywhere from, like, 200 to 500, and then, like, plus 10 dB at, like, 10K. And then, like, kind of the same thing in, like, the dynamic EQ. Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about AM radio sound? That I could just hear that in my head right now. Just all those S's around 10K just hitting your ears.
Don't yes this.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, it was super bright.
Super.
And Phil's,
Wow.
and we were talking about
That's pretty crazy.
because we brought up the conversation because Phil kind of does the same thing, right? With
Well, I
his
remember
ears.
Brandon liked to boost his stuff
Yeah.
up there, up in that range.
I mean, it's, like, anywhere from
felt like
235 to 300 for a high pass, and then, like, wide Q dips at, like, 200 to 500, and then bump at, like, 3K and a bump at 10K.
Yeah, and he likes that reverb too on top of it. So when you switched to the de facto mic, did you still have to do all that stuff with Phil's EQ and stuff?
Phil switched to de facto.
Yeah, so,
How long ago?
dude, that was, like,
Is that this one, right?
pretty recent.
No, it's actually the one that I'm on.
Oh, the one you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could sound like Phil Wickham.
I don't think so. I
This is amazing, right?
don't. I don't have that. I don't have that angel of a vocal.
You hear it, Phil? Because we know Phil's gonna watch this.
We
Because his
know.
boy's on. it.
Yeah, he is.
Hey, Phil.
Swapped it out a year ago, but in terms of, like, how it translates, less aggressive EQing, was
Yeah.
able to get away with a lot more. And it also didn't help too that, like, because at the time Jonah was mixing front of house and, like, wanted to take out the 4018, and between that capsule and, like, Mustard, it helped clean up his vocal, like, a lot. Like, I remember in the early days, like, when the dude had a wedge and, like, would sing into a 58 and sing
Oh,
with, like,
yeah.
one ear out and one ear in, like,
That's rough.
that was crazy.
Yeah, when he
That is
was
rough.
when he was here at those times, we had a wedge in the ears for him, and he just made it work. And then I heard the story.
wild.
I was talking to Brandon, and Brandon goes, "I was like, when did Phil start wearing both ears?" And he goes, "Oh, Gene."
Dude.
He said
Gene.
Gene. He said Gene.
The
He said Gene
legend.
made it happen.
Gene Kim. All right. So, Nick, you've been production manager for a while now. Getting on here, what, 3 years maybe? 2 years?
I think too, yeah.
And you've been doing monitors for very close to 10 years professionally, right? With Phil and all that?
17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23,
Something
7,
like
6,
that.
7 years, yeah.
Wow, okay.
I had to count with my fingers.
What are-
Boy.
What are some pointers you have for people who want to get to where you're at? Or pointers for people just entering in production, want to get into touring, want to get in with an artist? What are some pointers you have for them? Advice, inspiration.
I think really try to understand what you're getting into. Lee Fields did a really good, like, point to point a while back. Do you guys remember that? It was like a post where, like, hey, like, your
Yeah.
house of worship, your corporate, like you're doing this, you want to get into touring, like here's some things that you need to consider.
Yep.
I feel
I
like,
remember reading that.
yeah, like people always think grass is greener on the other side, and like it's a double-edged sword. So like people that want to freelance, whether if that's touring or doing corporate, like you see the freedom, you see the flexibility, you see the higher day rate, but with that comes like the uncertainty of like what next quarter is going to hold for you.
It's true.
Like you can have 3 months booked out on your calendar, you can have 1 month booked out on your calendar, and you're like,
You have 3 months and it gets canceled all of a sudden.
yeah.
Like
And
an artist gets sick or decides they don't want to tour and you're done.
yeah.
It's crazy.
And that's why I was like, really try to understand what you're getting yourself into, because if you're going to freelance, like I was doing the thing during COVID and I basically got caught with my pants down. Like
Dang.
if my wife and I didn't do like the Dave Ramsey thing where we paid off our debt and like
Yeah.
we saved up for like 3 to 5 months of expenses, like
Because you were freelance through COVID.
freelance through COVID a tiny bit, but like my friends were able to like hook it up, and I got a 9 to 5 in San
That's good.
Diego.
Very good.
And like that helped pay for the bills.
Dang.
But
That's good.
yeah, in terms of like tips and pointers, again, like really understanding like what you're gonna get into. When I started freelancing, like I realized that a lot of people have the mindset or like kind of the idea that I'm gonna leave my job and gigs are gonna come in. But like when I first started freelancing, leaving the rock in like 2016, and again freelancing after COVID, like it took a solid 6 to 7 months of like people really knowing in the market, like, hey, this dude's available for work. So
People just forget.
yeah,
I had the same thing. I wasn't full-time freelance because I was still part-time at Harvest, but I barely worked at Harvest at the time before COVID. And then COVID hit, and I had nothing but Harvest because we were still shooting stuff. And they finally brought me back on full-time, but it was the same thing. After COVID ended, it took probably a year before I started getting phone calls for more freelance work, which I can't take as much now because I'm full-time, but totally relatable. Like, I can't imagine if I was full-time freelance. It would have been miserable.
yeah,
It was wild.
Man, COVID was a hard time because I remember there was a time at Harvest where we were only working 1 day a week.
whoa,
Yeah, and thankfully they still paid us
And
our
they
full
still
hours.
paid us our full
Thanks
hours.
to
So it
them.
was
Shout
like,
out to Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, well, thanks for joining us on the show. Any bit of shout outs you want to give to people who helped you along the way, maybe?
honestly, like first and foremost, like thanks for having me on the podcast.
Of
Like,
course. Glad you could join us.
just the dude doing the thing. In terms of like shout outs and thank you, like Daddy Bright,
Daddy
Gene,
Bright.
like super
Brandon,
thankful
shout
for
out to you.
the
yeah.
opportunities.
Got a good crew, good people.
Yeah,
Thanks
great
for sharing them
people.
with us. All right. Well, thanks again, Nick. Brian, do you have anything you want to say in closing?
I do have to say it's nice not to be behind the scenes today.
Yeah, every now and then we're going to do, whenever me or Nick are gone, we're probably going to do an audio version. This was the audio version of it, I guess, for sound guys. We want to expand our horizon, beyond the lighting world and creative, also go into audio creatives as well and PMs and all that. So
Yeah.
This was great. I think it was a great change in pace. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to the page to view more. If you're listening to this, we're on everything. Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, everything. Spotify, I think, is the main one we're on. So make sure you follow us. And thanks again for watching Crew Talk.